In this DIY, we're going to be making a headboard for this double bed. This room definitely needs an upgrade, so I think a headboard will be a great start. So where do we get started? Well, I'm starting off with this DIY with a full sheet of shutter ply. Now obviously this can't fit into your car. It's 2.4 by 1.2 meters long. So make use of the guys at Builders and they can cut it all down to size for you. Now here's all the pieces which I've had cut to size, and I've set this for a double size bed. Now here's all the pieces left over, and as you can see there is a large offcut piece. So you can actually change your dimensions to suit your bed size, whether it's a queen or king size. There is plenty of spare material left to actually still make it out of one sheet of shutter ply. There's not a lot of tools and equipment needed for this DIY. I'm making use of a cordless drill, some screws, some wood glue, an orbital sander, some clamps, paintbrush, and some wood stain and sealer all in one. With any DIY, it's a good idea to clear your working space environment as much as possible and remove that clutter. Normally it's a bit easier said than done, but I'm going to make a conscious effort today to try and actually clear it, because I need to be using this tabletop as my frame and my jig to make the headboard. Right, that's it. Now it's time to get started with the DIY. I'm going to start off by selecting which side of the material that I actually want to be visible. And then I'm going to put that face down, because we're going to be doing this DIY kind of upside down. Then I'm going to proceed all the way through, just like the headboard behind me, and I'm leaving a space in between. Now, you can measure out your space with a tape measure if you want to, but 9 times out of 10, you end up making a mistake. So I just like to use some jigs, which I call a spacer, and I'll make use of those. It's a 12mm piece of offcut that I have. I've cut a few more extra pieces, and I'll just put those in there, and that'll act as a spacer for my next piece that's coming in. Again, I like the contour of that. Put that one face down, line it up, push it up flush, square on the end of my table here, square on the edge, and there we go. Since I am going to be using this back one as my datum, as my reference, I can just quickly lock it into place using some clamps, and then carry on going. Now again, it depends on the size of your workbench of how many pieces you can put in there. What we do is, as we go as far as we can, and then once we come to the end, we will fasten all those pieces and then just put in the remaining pieces as we need to. Okay, I've got 5 of the pieces in place. I now need to secure them all together, and I'm going to make use of the legs to do that. So pop these guys into position, and I'm going to offset them from the edge by about 200 mils. And we're going to be joining this now with wood screws and wood glue. Now normally sometimes you put the wood glue on the underside of this piece, but then you can actually see it in between the gap. So instead, mark that out. So now you're going to put wood glue on each one of those surfaces instead of all the way down on the leg side. I like to put wood glue in between the mating surface on timber. Even though you are screwing it together, it just stops any movement later on in time. Creates a better bond and a better joint. And I'm going to be making use of a smooth shank screw. The difference between the two screws, as you can see, the screw has a smooth shank at the top, and this screw, as it says, is a full thread all the way through. Now the whole purpose of that smooth shank is so that it doesn't hold into that top piece of timber. You want to screw your screw all the way through, and it bites into the bottom piece of timber, whilst the top of the head where the shank is actually slips, and the head also pulls down tight, joining those two surfaces together. That way you're not going to get a thing called a jacked joint, which is a slight gap in between the two surfaces, which is a potential problem when using a full thread screw. When fastening this, I'm going to fasten the first and the last ones to hold those all tightly together. Then I'll proceed with the ones in the middle. When putting all my screws in, I like to set it up like a bit of a production line, and I'm just going to position them all into place using a hammer just to tack them in position, and then I'm going to drive them all through with the cordless driver. First leg is in, exactly the same process for the other side. Now you see with these screws I'm using the square tip driver, I just find those a lot easier to use, and they don't slip as easily as your normal posi drivers. But it's really your preference and your choice of what you prefer to use, and also what's available at the time of the DIY. That's the structure together. I am going to put a middle brace on the center just to prevent these panels from bowing in time as well. I'm just going to mark out to the center, pop it in place, recess it back, and follow the exact same procedure as I did with the two side legs. Okay, we're nearly done. We've actually got this framework set up. We just need to put the last slat in the bottom. That's why it's got this funny overhang at the bottom. Just loosen it up, do the clamps, slide it down, and remember I'm making use of my desk or my tabletop to make sure that I've got it square. There you have it. I've completed the headboard from a structural point of view. Now remember, this is the back side of your headboard. You don't have to put all that effort into staining it up, sanding it down, and then making it look beautiful. It's going to be fastened up against a wall. If you are in an area where there's a lot of moisture, yes, it's a good idea to seal the back side. So we're going to flip it over and put all that effort onto the front side and the edges to make it look nice and smooth, to remove any splinters, any burrs, and then we're going to start staining it up and sealing it. The sanding is done. It's now time to seal it and stain it. I'm using the Fired Earth Woodworks. It's a stainer and sealer all in one. It really is kind of like a modern paint. What I really like about it as well is it dries in a few hours, so I can put the second coat on the same day and actually finish this DIY. It's also water-based, so it makes much easier to wash your brushes or your rollers, whatever you want to use. You can use a roller, a sprayer, or a brush. I opt for a brush because I like those little stroke marks that you get from the bristles. It helps enhance the grain and bring out the texture of the wood and just give it some better character and bring that timber to life. So here we have it, the DIY is complete. It's a simple headboard made from one sheet of shutter ply. Simple, easy, quick and effective. Anybody can do this. But there's definitely something missing. I think I need some side tables, so it looks like I've got another DIY on my hands. If you like this clip, like it, share it. You can also subscribe to our Builders YouTube channel where there's a range of product reviews and DIYs just like this.